Alright, hello and welcome everyone to the first episode in a short mini-series called PTSD and Conflict Through the Eyes of a Teenager, which falls under the overall video series called Twelvie Talks. Okay, for the first episode, we're going to be focusing on the conflict side of things. Okay, we got James. Say hello, James.
Yeah, hey, hello.
Yeah, we got Evan. Say hello, Evan.
Yeah, bro.
Okay, and we got Kim. Say hello, Kim.
Oh,
Okay, so our first question is
He's a
conflicts going on in the Hong Kong, Kashmir, and all around
Okay.
the world for that matter. Do you think for there to be peace, there must always be the looming threat of conflict?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it's a very good.
I believe that peace
Oh.
is possible in any sense of the word, because even if no countries are at war, there's always going to be battles inside their respective governments. So I believe peace as a concept is impossible.
Yeah, and we
okay, guys. So for this, I think we should go one person to the other, to the other, to the other. Okay.
Okay,
So
yeah.
for now, it's James, and it's Sven, and then it's Evan, and it's me. Okay. Is that good?
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, James, you finished?
Yeah, that's basically just
Okay, that's your discussion. All right, so basically, I don't think peace is real. And now let me explain that because you can't have complete world peace without somebody stepping out of line. That's called impossible.
Yes, that's about what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
And if you were going to do
Greater-
that, you'd
greater
basically
suffering
be
is better.
policing your country. Like it's
police
just no
do it.
good. I think. Yeah, police say. Yeah.
It's
What's
like
your
North
religion?
Korea.
What's your
They
religion?
technically have peace, but they're like under a totalitarian government.
Yeah, exactly.
So you gone?
Evan, your turn, Evan.
Evan, your
All right,
stance
so
on the
there's
matter.
this great analogy in Mission Impossible. It sounds dumb.
Okay.
It does sound dumb,
Yeah.
but it's a really good lesson. It's basically staging a worldwide terror attack where about 1 billion people died. In the movie, this happened,
Yeah.
and the greater the suffering, the greater the peace. So
Actually, a lot of truth to it.
That's what they said about
yes,
World War I.
exactly. So for there to be peace, there has to be a huge multi-billion casual conflict in order for there to be truly be peace
That's
for
actually
multiple
true.
hundred years.
That's actually true.
So yeah, it's
I
like
mean, war is.
because people like you have to because humans people in power naturally have instincts. Like we have a human. There's a natural greed drive per se.
We're all humans.
Yes,
All
all
animals
humans
at
have a
heart.
natural greed drive. So whether it be food, resources, it's just that like humans have been
It's just
fighting and
a
killing each
constant
other ever
need
since
for
our inception.
power.
Yeah,
It's a constant need to expand. Like
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Who's the person who hasn't talked? I don't know your name. Yeah.
It's
you.
Kim. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Honestly, I think war is just inevitable. Just like
Mm.
if you have peace, like you can never have true peace.
Yeah.
that's
For
true.
peace, there has to be war, and for war there has to be peace too. Like it's yin and yang basically for both of them.
And like you can never.
How do you
know
think
who's
any
fighting
modern
the
country
conflict,
exists? Because for multiple generations, the British
yeah.
killed and went into random countries and enslaved and built. That's how Australia was built. That's how the US was built. Every single
That's how
country in the world
India was built.
based off of one premise:
Raj.
rape and pillage. Rape and pillage. That is how the world that we know it today was created.
Yeah.
So,
That's
although
that's
war is our greatest curse, it's also our greatest blessing.
Because it teaches us things like
It teaches
World
us
War
what's
Two.
wrong and right.
I saw a video about it, and it's like the message behind the end of World War Two was almost there. It wasn't a good message, but it was a smart message of you have to almost like it taught war with the use of other nations as your ally, and it's like
Yeah.
war is more of a teaching point than and a way to gain things, less than a thing that just people do because they want to.
Yeah, and
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 also
it's
never
really
they kind of
interesting to
need
think
to.
about
our
because
greatest technological advancements were created because of war.
Yeah,
yeah, and like
and even like social
like
changes,
sonar was created because of Like,
Yeah.
Well,
so
why do you
And,
think
and
the
even
why do,
social
why do you think
changes,
there
like
was such
women
demand
were
for
never in the
cars in the
workplace in the
40s and
US until
30s?
World War II because all the men were off fighting wars. So it's not even just technological; it's social
Just
reforms as well.
society, like
Yeah,
built.
it changes everything.
And I'm pretty sure if we haven't had these wars like World War One, Vietnam War, World War Two,
Yeah.
whatever, I feel like there's a possibility that like females could still have been treated like very differently.
Well, yeah.
Like there's a good chance it wasn't, but there's always the thought that they could have been treated differently.
Yeah. Do we want to go on to the next question or?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we'll go on.
Next question is, what are your opinions on the destruction and disconnection wars leave behind?
Okay. Well, we kind
Mm.
of said this at the end. It's I believe that a lot of it is just collateral damage. I believe that a lot of it is unneeded, but I believe that not a lot of it is also inevitable.
Yeah, like it's very
Like
unfortunate, and I don't mean this in any
like
way,
there
but
are
like
instances
there was this
where
YouTuber
like
who,
the US dropping bombs on the Japanese. I believe that Hiroshima was okay. I believe Nagasaki was overkill because they could have just used the same bomb on both, but they used an extra powerful bomb on Nagasaki, and
yeah,
that was unneeded. Whereas Hiroshima, I
yeah,
believe that
it's like,
they were doing whatever they could to win. I don't
yeah, it
believe
kind of
they
sucks
needed
out.
to drop nukes, but
It feels like
in the end, it was worth it because it stopped them
it
from
feels like
killing each other.
it feels like over the years. Well, I wouldn't know this because I'm like 2 years old, dude. But it feels like in comparison to the world, I guess, it feels like over the years citizens have been at danger while there's been a war that's being waged in the world more than ever. Like the world, and it feels really weird to say this, but it feels like the world is on the brink of destruction during like these talks with Donald Trump and like North
Yeah.
Korea. It feels like
Well, even the
it's
stuff
just
between
one button
Pakistan and
click
India
away from destruction.
with Kashmir, it's like
The
the closest
Pakistan and
humans have
India
ever
would
become
destroy the
to
Middle East.
destruction. Well, like Pakistan and India, when they were fighting over Jammu and Kashmir, that's the closest we've ever come to destruction since
Cuban Missile Crisis,
yeah, and
and
Exactly.
it didn't even get touched on too much, and it just seems it's always inevitable, and it's been like this since the Cold War. There was a short peace time. There was a very very short time where the average population of most countries wasn't at harm, and that was between the downfall of the USSR and destruction of the Twin Towers, and it just
Yeah,
seems
that's
like
really trash.
it's been happening for so long that it's getting normalized,
Like,
and
it's
yeah.
incredibly unnerving, or not unnerving, but just
Yeah,
crazy to think that our future like is on, or it's is on a red button. Like it's on
yeah.
somebody pressing a red button to like launch a nuclear bomb into the
Well,
atmosphere or
yeah.
whatever.
It's like this is where my personal biases come in. I believe so much of the US, especially, is dictated by the media, and it's like even Donald Trump has literally said that there's one show, Fox and Friends, which is like
Yeah,
Fox News. He's literally said that he has been inspired by things that they have said on that show, and they have literally talked to him about policies, like
yeah,
in private talks.
Tucker
And when
Carlson.
like
Tucker Carlson is one of his best friends
yeah,
in the Fox News
Tucker's
presenter.
Sean Hannity. Like he went to political rallies when Fox News punished other people for going to those rallies and attacked Democrats for going to those rallies. And it's like I believe the modern media is too influential on government
yeah.
and it's too
It
biased.
kind of feels
that is
like
true.
it kind of feels like well, if I were a US citizen, it would feel like I'm kind of at the bottom, and it feels like the media is above me because the
Yeah.
media just has so much power.
But that's like the
Toxic.
majority of the population in most countries. Like
Yeah,
once again, I'm going into like very opinionated stuff, but it's almost like the novel 1984, where it's like they're all under control of one they're under one control of an institution
The
that
Big Brother.
dictates what they think and they do, and obviously that is not. I'm not saying that we are under that. I'm just saying that it's too close to that for us not to be scared. And because people are getting their info from those exact sources, the vast majority of the population is not aware of that.
Yeah, and like oftentimes you get these media sources, praising Donald Trump or whatever, and then one of the smaller people running for president, they make a statement, and the media just straight up attacks them. Like,
Yeah.
and
It's
because their
just
party
it's
is
way too
objectively
much.
smaller than the media's
Yeah.
not really going to get caught out unless they say something
Yeah.
objectively out of line.
It's just punching down. Like it's
So kick them
and
while
then
they're on the floor.
the the institutions, like the media institutions that attack, well, not attack, but don't agree with Trump or whoever's in power, the other side is going to call them out and say, like with under Trump, it's fake news with attacking CNN and NBC. They're
Yeah,
like
and then
fake
and then
news.
you're
You
up
don't have
against a
to
brick
facts.
wall. Like
Yeah,
there's virtually nowhere to go.
and it's just when you know about what the people actually like, it's almost infuriating because like Tucker Carlson, for example, he most people like him because he's anti-elite, but he has literally stated in an interview that he is elite, and it's like
Well, yeah.
it's just stupid. But we're going away from the question now. So
Well,
what
actually,
was the rest
it's a good conversation because,
of?
yeah, it's just I think, like, it comes back. I think what happens is that I don't know if this is my personal bias coming in here, but I feel like, people like how you see all of these multi-trillion-dollar companies saying like gay pride.
Yeah,
I mean, not that
It
that's
feels
bad,
false.
not that that's a bad
definitely not a
message. It's
bad
just
thing.
like it's so forced and fake. Like you can just tell.
Yeah.
It's just
You can
But okay,
you can
guys,
tell they're
guys.
doing it
This
because somebody's
Guys, I think we're getting off topic of
Yeah,
the.
yeah.
Yeah,
This
alright,
is
alright,
about
alright.
the destruction of war. Okay.
Alright.
rich white
Okay,
liberals.
so
Alright,
so
alright.
who is talking next?
Let's
So
move on to the next question.
Sven.
Alright, so
No. Try to keep on topic.
what do you, what do you guys think is the number one cause of war?
I'll let you guys talk first since I go on tangents.
The number one cause of war is far and away religion. Far and away
well,
religion.
religion and greed.
Yeah,
Religion and
this
greed.
isn't. I don't feel this is much about facts. I think it's more about opinions. I think
Well,
that.
no.
Yeah.
Well, it's not.
You
No,
guys
I don't
remember the
think it's
Crusades,
facts.
right?
It's more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
But
there's three things.
Everybody is equally as guilty here.
Yeah.
yeah, but
Except for peace-based. I mean, conventional religion like Islam, Christianity. Those
I mean,
type
like the
of.
whole Crusades were just to
yeah,
take back the
but
Holy Land. That's 196
I mean
years
Yeah.
this
of
goes back to
Christianity.
our last question where I believe like even like the Crusades, they blindly went with their faith under the Pope, which I do not know much about a lot of the Crusades. That's not really where I excel. But I know that multiple of the popes in some of the Crusades were greedy. I was about to say were very greedy. Like they were not fair. They took bribes, and that's why
No,
we
the
just
problem about the popes,
we always listen to who's above us, and I believe that that shouldn't be how people act. Almost.
another problem I found with the Pope is the fact that they stepped into non-secular matters, which is non-secular is non-religious matters, and they basically, like several popes, straight up just went. So they wanted to get the Byzantine Empire to its former glory, and they wanted the Holy Land back to themselves, and they also wanted a lot of that good gold. And no, the fact that the popes were able to like have power in non-secular matters, that's a huge problem.
But
Like
even
if religious figureheads gets power in non-secular matters, they have power for anything. But that thanks to modern like centuries, we don't believe in much.
But it goes back
religious.
to the greed thing, and I believe that it's just been replaced by things like more news. But going back to like how war starts, it is, in my opinion, greed. Like even let's look at Fourth Crusade. I'm fairly sure it was Fourth Crusade. They're like, let's take back the Holy Land for the Byzantines, and it was just I I can't remember if it was Byzantines or not. I'm getting mixed up, but they were like, okay, Venice
Yeah,
gave them
Venice
all the
wants.
boats, and then they went. They didn't get to the Holy Land. They stopped off at the time it was called either Constantinople or Constantinople, and they just sacked it instead of going to do what they wanted. They were fueled by greed.
That was
Yeah.
kind of true, and that is true. That the Crusades, well, the Crusades had to say the Crusaders they didn't have the money for the boats. The Venetians wanted the
Yeah.
how to say Crusaders needed boats. Venetians didn't
Yeah,
wanted the money from the Crusaders as they booed
boats and
because but the Crusaders didn't have enough money, so so the Venetians told them to sack a town
yeah,
that was already Christian. They sacked it. The town was
Yeah.
city of Zara, and then they went to Constantinople. I forgot
But,
what happens there, but then like the leader of the Byzantine Empire like made them do a favor, but they didn't have the money to repay them, so the
yeah,
Crusaders just sacked and ransacked everything and made a
and
mess.
it's just by now, since we have foresight, we can see that did pay off for the Venetians in the Renaissance. They were like the richest city in the world, and they're the long-lasting republic in history. And so greed pays off. And going back into the modern day, we don't have foresight now. We can't see what's going on. So like,
So
I believe that the majority of what is going on is good, but I'm sure that that's what they thought back then too. But once again, going off the question, so
Yeah.
I'll just be
In my opinion, and this is my opinion only, I think there's three main points which drive war. There's resources, religion, and greed. Resources, because you always want to expand, like you always want to expand your resources, obviously, so you can
yeah.
feed more people easier.
like China's a
Greed,
perfect
Well,
example.
because you want to
but
take
that
more
goes.
land, and religion, because there's always going to be some people who severely disagree with other people. And here's the thing: we can't really criticize. Well, it's hard to criticize them for that because they were brought up a different way.
But like, I just thought
They just take
of
to
this
extreme measures.
great. Well, not great, but something that fits it very well. Where it fits all three. The U.S. This is modern day. The U.S. is selling US manufactured bombs and weapons to Saudi Arabia for money and
And the
easier
oil.
relations with oil. And do you know what Saudi Arabia is doing with those? They're
They're
using it to
bombing
commit
school buses
that
in Yemen
they
full of children.
they are committing
Well, they
war
fund
crimes with United States weapons, with United States manufactured jets being refueled by United States manufactured air fuelers and tankers, and they're using it to commit war crimes against people rising up against a government.
And
And
it
I don't
feels
have
like
too many opinions on it
majority
it
because
and
feels
like
I
like it's
believe
going
all
right
of
under the US's nose.
ISIS is because of Saudi Arabia. Those terrorist groups like ISIS and Al
Yeah.
Qaeda, Saudi Arabia funded
Yeah.
them,
Yeah,
and the
because
US had to fight ISIS, but they don't even focus on the big threat
yeah,
here,
and
that's
then like
that's the Saudis.
it's all greed, and like with the Middle East, it is like a Cold War. I saw a video on YouTube where it's just between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and by extension Russia and the US. And it's just they're fighting their own wars. Oh, guys, let's fund the militant groups to rise up against how to forget the guy in Iraq, Hussein. Let's fund these groups to rise up against Hussein. Oh wait, now that's ISIS and Al Qaeda. Like,
Like it kind of happened
Well, actually,
World War
ISIS
Al
and Al
Qaeda
Qaeda
was actually
came from the Mujahideen. The
yeah, and
Mujahideen was the
Al
driving
was
force of
funded.
Osama bin Laden in the 90s.
mm,
Then in the early 2000s, it went to Al Qaeda, I think, in about
So
2001
the
to around
Mujahid
2000.
like the thing about the Mujahideen is that was directly funded by the US. ISIS is not like directly funded by the US. It's directly funded by
Yes, it's a
Saudi
derivative.
Arabia.
It's a derivative
yeah,
ever since
Saudi
about
Arabia.
I mean,
2000.
Mujahideen was a mess
Yeah.
created by the Americans. ISIS is still a mess created by the Americans. But ISIS could have never existed if America didn't do what they did out of greed. I
But,
mean, the
but
Mujahideen, that wasn't what that was
Yeah,
kind of
well, the reason the Mujahideen even existed in the first place was to fight the Russians in the 80s.
exactly, and that's the idea of that's okay-ish, but the result of that wasn't great.
it's almost like Russia and the US and by extension Saudi Arabia and Iran, are just they're using these militant groups, these terrorist groups, these oppressed peoples under dictatorships, and these terrorist attacks funded by these militant groups as playthings, because it was all created by them. It was all it was created by the English and French after the fall of the Ottomans.
That
But
is true.
like,
Though English and French made an absolute mess of the Middle East.
yeah, because they just cut it up in straight lines.
Yeah.
This wouldn't
Okay.
have happened if the English and French just gave back the land
Yeah.
to
But
the original owners who went Lawrence of
Well-
Arabia, who
well-
helped Arabia.
okay, so the British did, in quotes, give back some land in Saudi Arabia to the tribes. The House of Saud just was by far the biggest and was able to stomp over the rest.
And
of
they
them,
just stomped over everything, and the House of Saud is now Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And if the British actually helped out, this would have never happened.
It's just all like
It's past
empty
past
promises
events.
and lies and corruption in World War One.
It's past events ruining the future.
Like,
And when people say the
everything
past affects
that
the future,
can be
Man,
attributed
I don't
to
think that the
some
world
rich
understands like
people,
everything's going on.
some rich emperors, some rich monarchs, some rich elected officials taking bribes back in like the 1700s. Like, we cannot just do whatever we want and expect the consequences not to affect later generations.
Okay. Do you want to move on to
Okay.
question?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Question
question 4 is, why do you think some countries are more passive than others when it comes to like tension and conflict? So, for example, why do you think Australia is passive compared to, say, like
China.
North Korea or China?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Well, you can
Well, I
talk
think
first.
that
Okay. I've got
okay, so
the
China
thing.
literally has the entire world economy in its hands. We have
That's what I was
like
gonna
what
say.
100 Super Hornets in our entire air force, and like 15 helicopters we use in Afghanistan. We have about 100,000 troops, about 1,000 tanks. Like the U.S. has, and like the China has basically in the entire world in its hands, plus a multiple thousand fighter jet air force and navy. They have aircraft carriers. They have
Well-
easily 100 times the military power that Australia has, plus the world economy. They could cripple anybody they wanted, but they don't.
Okay, so the way I look at it is Australia is being funded by two of, if not actually, the two richest and most powerful countries of the world, US and China. Our economy is basically run by China and India. You can see all the mines opening up, all the ports, like even the
Yeah.
port in the city where I live, Newcastle. It is just a lot of it is owned by the Chinese, and it's like and under
Trade and all that,
quote
yeah.
communist government, and it's like Australia is passive because if they pick the side of the
If they
stronger
pick a
economy,
side,
which
they're
is
going to get
China,
destroyed.
they if they pick the side of China, which is the stronger economy, Australia's the vast majority of our military is going to be gone because we take a lot of weapons from the US. Like, Australia takes more weapons from the US than South Korea. We take the second most weapons from the US, only behind Saudi Arabia. So if we lose our if we're not allies with US, our government's gone because our military's gone. Sorry, because the US has by far the most, well, not the biggest military, but the most technologically advanced military. Like, China has one aircraft carrier, and it doesn't even have like slingshots, so they have to use small planes.
It also feels like
Russia,
But
it
then
feels
if
like
Australia
Australia's
takes the
happy
side
with what
of
they
the
have.
US, if Australia takes the side of the US, guess what? Our economy's in ruins. It's already happening today. Like, the Australian economy is I was about to swear again. The
well, I
Australian
think that
economy is
actually
really
the
bad.
most technologically advanced. I think that the military with the most brains far goes to Russia, but the military with the most brawn goes to the US. Because Russia has hypersonic nuclear missiles. They're making hypersonic nuclear missiles 5 times the speed of sound.
Yeah, it's
And you can
So-
just tell that by like the way they engage in battle. like you can tell
Yeah,
it feels like they
but
have the upper hand. Like they
and
during
because
the
of that,
Cold War, like
because
they kind of drew their enemies into a particular part of Russia where it was particularly cold, so they wouldn't, get
yeah,
past their lines.
but even like to this day, it's like Russia has a very strong military, and same with US. But I'm focusing on Russia right now. It is just, oh, guys, we have a very strong military. Don't oppose us, and so they can take risks. It's like, oh, guys, that's not our troops invading Crimea. That's just some random people that are fighting with very similar intentions to us that are fighting for us. Like that's not our people, and it's
Mm.
just and people oppose it, but the governments don't. The governments of the countries being invaded do. They're not strong enough to get support of
Yeah,
other countries.
and it feels like Australia has a mindset that, well, I'm not sure if it's a good mindset to have in the grand scheme of things, but
Yeah,
we feel like we're happy with what we have. We feel like we don't need to
yeah.
take
Well,
anything,
yeah,
but we don't
because
have to
it
lose
is
anything.
it is a good it is a good
We're an
like
incredibly
is it
fortunate
ethical? Of course
country.
it's
I would
not.
be fine, just, yeah.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah,
think that
look,
I thought you were gonna say something else, but I think the reason that Australia keeps so neutral on a lot of big war issues is that it's like don't stir the pot if you don't have to. Like just stay
yeah.
out of
Like,
it. Is it
I,
that
I think
hard?
Australia is
Australia,
Do
very
not stick in crazy.
Yeah, yeah, don't it's just like
no.
yeah, it's odd. It's like
and the thing with Australia is that we're stuck in the middle of the two biggest superpowers in the world.
Yeah, but I feel
What
like
can you
Australia's also
do?
like Australia is as someone who lives in a place where a lot of industrial complexes are, and there is a lot of industrial people are moving not forward with industry, but they're building more. It's like we're just building more unrenewable resources, and do you know why? Because it's profitable with China. And do you know why we're not building bigger things? Because we need to have enough money for the US to think this is a country that we can take money off to give them our weapons. It's like we can't change what we're doing. We can't change to renewable resources. We can't change of building like where I live. They're building like brand new gas terminals. Like that we can't go away from that because that's what's profitable with China. That means that we
well, it's
have
not that it's not
they give us
profitable. It's just that like we've built entire economy on these things, and it's gonna
yeah.
take like 30 or 40 years to switch.
Yeah, but that's what we can't afford to take that risk because we
Yeah.
need the money. We need the money off China so China doesn't put more pressure on us, which they're putting pressure on our government as it is, and we need that money so we can take the weapons off the US so we have the
Yeah,
weapons to
and
defend ourselves.
nowadays it feels like we're pushing so much more, like so
So we
much
have to
further
be neutral.
into like the gas and coal industry that it's going to take us longer and
Long.
longer and longer to go into the renewable energy like
Yeah, yeah.
scheme of
It's
things.
uh. Do we want to move on
Uh,
next question
we
or
can move on to the last question.
okay?
Uh, so our overlying question is, what has war been like through your eyes as you've grown up into your teenage years and your early,
War is hell.
yeah,
Sure. I believe that it is a plaything for I believe it is a plaything for a lot of strong governments to just start civil wars, even in the Cold War. Like all the dictatorships in Central and South America funded by the US. It's just like it seems like bigger countries are just making use of the fact that that smaller countries embroiled in civil war don't have a big enough economy to fight back. And in the long term, look at Afghanistan. Look at Afghanistan. It was like uh, terrorist forces versus the US. The US was like, guys, we're gonna build this. We're gonna build the ring road, and it was funded by heaps of nations. And at this point, it's destroyed, and the US isn't doing anything about it. So it just seems like empty promises, and war seems like a plaything for the
yeah.
rich.
And
But
it's kind
I
of
don't
funny
think it
because
go away
let me
because
put
there's
a
always gonna be
scenario.
greedy people.
When you,
If people are greedy enough and they get power with that greed, they're gonna think, oh, I'm just gonna be even more greedy.
Is it fun if I talk
let me
like for
Yeah, yeah.
for like a sec?
I'll stop.
let me put a
Like,
scenario. So,
so
like, say when you're
Speaking of,
4, your perception of war and fighting is little Timmy in the daycare over
War
there.
bad.
He yeah, war bad pretty much. He took your fire truck, war bad. But no, like when you grow up, say you've reached double digits, you've reached 10, and then you look on the TV and there's fighting over in Afghanistan, and you literally see a plane strafing this city. Your perception of war completely changes because
Mm.
now
Well,
maybe it's
I
changed
believe
from little Timmy stole your fire truck to hey, there's a jet flying over your city.
I
Like,
think
well, I
what
believe
it
no
is.
one's perception of war is right. I believe Yeah.
I'm gonna do a little bit of an analogy here.
Yeah.
You know how you listen to songs when you're a kid and you're just like, that song is bad? And
yes,
then you get slightly older and you listen to the lyrics and then you're just like, oh man, this is good.
kind of a deep
It's
song.
like
Yeah.
as you get older, you start to get you get a deeper understanding of what it really means and what it is. It's not just as easy as this is bad or this is good.
Mm.
Like it's a lot more nuanced than that.
I
And so
the
it's
thing,
the exact same with war. Like things,
It's like
all things
anything in
happen for a
life,
reason.
almost.
a
Why
problem I
one
found with war.
war happened could have been relations with two countries that happened for multiple hundred years. There was like 1,000 little tiny paper cuts that eventually led to this massive war.
Honestly, a problem I found with war is the fact that old men fight the wars. No, I got it wrong. The old men
command
order the young men to fight the wars. Meanwhile, the old people just chill out, while the young men has to suffer. Young people have to suffer due to the consequences of the wars. And after the old men die, the young men the mindset is make the new young people suffer again, and to end the cycle of old people ordering older young people just to fight these wars for them, and these young people don't get like personal gain or anything. They just end up with suffering and
Yeah,
suffering.
it's the way I look at it is I think everyone's gonna have a biased view about it. Mostly until like adult life, it's usually the same. It's like as a kid, it's like when you first learn about war, it's like war bad, don't kill other people. Then as a teenager, and it's the same with kids, you're mostly more focusing on your personal life. Then as an adult, you kind of split off, and it's like, are you successful or unsuccessful? Then split again. Are you If you're unsuccessful, do you benefit more from militaristic or like militaristic policies? If you're if you're successful, are you going to be what kind of job are you going to get? Are you going to be in financial sector where you're going to benefit from stronger economies, or are you going to be in a military sector where you're going to benefit from more war? And
Yeah,
it just keeps on branching off, and everyone's biased.
yeah, and it's like your perception of war, like when you're younger and you see like a traumatic event, say a kid falls over and breaks his leg, maybe you start crying or something because, and then, but
Or
then you have your, okay, dude,
no,
then you have
sorry.
your mum comes over and like hugs you or whatever. When you're older, you don't get any of that. You see 867 people dead on TV. You're just left to soak it in. That's like 870, whatever
Got
I
to
said,
deal with it.
people. And an interesting statistic is that, and this kind of leads into our next episode that'll come eventually. Uh, Around 15.5% of the soldiers involved in the Iraq War, so Operation Iraqi Freedom,
So,
have a 15.5% chance of getting PTSD in a year or so, in less than a year of service after they finish,
yeah.
which
I
is
mean, the Iraq War was pretty
pretty
bad.
crazy.
The Iraq War was bad, but I feel like it's a bit overblown. I believe all the wars in the Gulf for the US are fairly like they just stomped over smaller
Like,
nations.
True, Desert Storm
I mean,
was a
I'm not.
massive joke.
Yeah,
all of them
Desert
are
Storm.
bad.
Desert Storm was a joke.
Let's
Like
make it clear.
I'm not trying to kind of say, or people died. That doesn't matter. I'm just saying, it is kind of overblown in my opinion. I believe that it was easy for the US, and it goes back to what I said earlier, where it's just playthings for the rich and powerful. Like, you
Some
think
countries are
do you
just
think that
dolls.
President I think it was Bush, do you think he cared that do you think that Do you think that George Bush cared that Jim from Alabama died in a bunker in Iraq? No, he doesn't care about that. Do you think Jim's family cares about that? Yes, immensely. Like, it's. I don't know.
Another
so
thing
easy
that
to
got
do
me
something.
confused is
It's so easy when to do something if you don't know the person.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
when you
that's wait. You
keep
go
your
first.
friend alive if it meant killing 10 million people, of course you would. You
No.
may not think that you would do that, but you would. Right?
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like oil executives. They crush hundreds of
So
thousands of souls every day and don't even think about it.
Mm.
Anyway, we have to end the series now. It's getting a bit over time constraints.
Take everything
40
we say
minutes,
here
boys.
with
40 minutes,
a
boys.
grain of
Let's go.
salt. It's controversial topics, but it's just
I-
our 2 cents on the subject.